Continuing on in Chapter 6, let's take a look at assault, and specifically simple assault. First, let's deal with some of the basic elements of traditional assault and battery. We often hear the term assault and battery, but what do they really mean? Well, under traditional law, assault was an attempted unlawful touching. So this doesn't mean that you had to hit the person, you had to beat them, you had to kick them, you had to do anything like that. It could just be a mere touch. But it was an unlawful touching. The person didn't allow you to do it. And it wasn't an accidental touching. You just happened to brush up against someone. But it was some intentional unlawful touching that we were dealing with. But for assault, it was attempted unlawful touching. That's important because battery was the actual unlawful touching. So under traditional law, and we'll see it's different in most states today, but under traditional law, assault was an attempted unlawful touching. So you take a swing at somebody, but you miss them. That was assault. If you connected with your punch, that was a battery. So you battered someone if you actually did touch them. You hit them with your punch, with your kick, whatever. You pushed them. Assault was, again, an attempt to do these things. Today, in almost all jurisdictions, we've combined these two offenses, assault and battery, into one single crime, the crime of assault. So under current law, we don't have the crimes of assault and battery. We just have assault. So whether you attempt to touch someone unlawfully or you actually succeed in unlawfully touching them, today it's most likely in your state to be just simply assault. We've done away essentially with the law, with the crime of battery. The Model Penal Code is an example of this. So let's start with simple assault. In the next part, we'll deal with aggravated assault. So there are two types of assaults generally, simple and aggravated. And as you can probably guess, aggravated requires a showing of a greater injury or a greater threat of force and injury, while simple assault is a less harmful type of unlawful touching or attempted unlawful touching. So under the Model Penal Code, a person is guilty of assault if 1. The person attempts to cause or purposely, knowingly, or recklessly causes bodily injury to another. So we're not talking about serious bodily injury, like we saw with robbery. But here we're talking about any bodily injury. If you attempt to cause it, or you purposely, knowingly, or recklessly cause bodily injury. So even if it's just something slight, like a bruise, a cut, if you acted purposely, knowingly, or recklessly, then you're guilty of simple assault if you actually cause that injury or attempt to cause it. The Model Penal Code includes the mental state of negligently, but it says you're guilty of simple assault if you negligently cause bodily injury, but it's with a deadly weapon. So normally if you injure someone with a deadly weapon, it would be aggravated assault. But if your mental state was negligently, so you weren't aware of the risk that you could injure someone, but you should have been aware of the risk, and this is a risk that involves a deadly weapon, then you can be responsible. So if you get your new ninja sword and you don't know that swinging it around in your living room is dangerous and that your roommate could be walking out at any minute and walk into it, and your roommate does walk into it and you've injured them, we could possibly hold you responsible for a simple assault because you were negligently swinging your sword around. Any reasonable person would have known this is in the living room. It's a place where a person could walk by. Again, we could argue that in court, but if we could prove that that was negligently swinging, that you were negligently swinging your new sword around, that would certainly be a deadly weapon, and you were using it in a negligent way. Or maybe you were cleaning your gun and you should have known that there was a risk that it was loaded, but you weren't aware of the risk, and you injured someone. you shot the gun, and again, you didn't cause serious bodily injury, but you just caused bodily injury. The bullet ricocheted around and nicked your best friend. It didn't seriously hurt them, but it caused some kind of slight injury. Then if we can show that you were negligent in the way you were handling your gun, then you can be responsible for a simple assault. If under Part C, if you attempt by physical menace to put another in fear of imminent serious bodily injury, then you're guilty of simple assault. So here you haven't actually caused any serious bodily injury or threatened it, but you're looking really angrily at them. Not just in an ordinary way, but a way that would be considered physical menace. So you're standing over top of them, you're glaring at them. And if that would put them in fear of imminent serious bodily injury, they think you're going to kill them, they think you're going to seriously injure them, then you're guilty of simple assault. So simple assault is a crime that's very lightly punished. So you may be sitting there saying, well, this doesn't seem fair that just by having a physically menacing stance that you could be guilty of a crime. But again, we have some additional conditions, such as it's such menace that it would put another in fear of imminent serious bodily injury. That's a pretty menacing stance. It's not just glaring at someone because you're angry at them, but it goes beyond that. So that would be considered a simple assault under the Model Penal Code. So again, to review, if your mental state is you're purposely or knowingly or recklessly causing or attempting to cause bodily injury, so not serious bodily injury, but if you were just reckless, if you were acting purposely, acting knowingly, and you cause bodily injury or you attempt to cause bodily injury, you're guilty of simple assault. If you negligently cause a bodily injury with a deadly weapon, so again, not a serious bodily injury, you didn't cut off their arm, you didn't stab them in a vital area, anything like that, you didn't shoot them in a vital area, but you caused bodily injury with a deadly weapon, then you're guilty of simple assault. Or if you have such a physically menacing stance that it puts another person in fear of imminent serious bodily injury, that's also simple assault. And you can see, though, that simple assault is just a misdemeanor, unless it was committed in a fight or scuffle, as they call it, but a fight where both parties agreed to fight. So, this is a situation where you and your friend say, I bet you I can beat you up. No, you can't. Yes, I can. And so you get into a fight, but you both mutually consented to it, but it's out in public, so it's a disturbance. But if you both mutually consented, then it's even a smaller offense. It's only a petty misdemeanor. So if you both consented to assault each other, but it wasn't a licensed boxing match, it wasn't a licensed ultimate fighting match, any of those kinds of things, then you can be both cited for simple assault, even though you both agreed to it, but it's only a petty misdemeanor. Pennsylvania simple assault is largely the same as the Model Penal Code. So we can see that the first part is exactly the same, other than Pennsylvania uses the word intentionally instead of purposely. Part 2 is exactly the same. Part 3 is the same. But we've added one special one in Part 4, that you're guilty of simple assault if you conceal or attempt to conceal a needle on your person and intentionally or knowingly penetrate a law enforcement officer or correctional official during the course of an arrest or any search of the person. So if you conceal or attempt to conceal a hypodermic needle, so a needle that you're using for your drugs, and you intentionally or knowingly allow it to penetrate a law enforcement officer as they're searching you, you're guilty of a simple assault. So this is why police officers often ask the individual if they have any needles in their pockets before the officer puts his or her hand inside the